Okay, welcome again. So as I said, today I'm going to talk about the qualitative research. Whether you're designing your first qualitative study or preparing a manuscript for submission, the framework in this session are directly applicable. And I want this to be more practical. Okay, and so I'm going to give some tips how to write the qualitative papers. And also, I will try to cover some theoretical aspects about research questions and overall the epistemology of the qualitative studies. Okay, here is the roadmap. So I will try to cover 6 sections. I will move quite quickly. And so use these slides to orient yourself. Section 1 and 2 build a more conceptual foundation about what qualitative research is and why it matters in health sciences particularly. And section 3 maps the design landscape. Next 4 and 5 section, we will try to go deeper into structure and the rigor of the paper itself. And the final section 6 will closing by the publishing strategy. And if you're already familiar with the sections, any sections, 1 or 2 from your methods, then just keep the later sections in focus. Okay, let's go. So we begin with the questions that sounds obvious, but is often sort of poorly answered in manuscripts and papers. So what exactly is qualitative research is? And just thinking very simple, saying that it's non-numerical is something that sounds very temptation. That framing is technically accurate. Yes, you can say that it's non-numerical, but intellectually it's thin, I would say, because qualitative research has a distinct epistemological orientation. Basically, it's a concern with meaning, interpretation, and social context, and not just saying non-numerical. So let's look through some of the definitions of what's the qualitative research is. And here I have 3 sort of foundational definitions. And for instance, Green and Thorogood emphasize the nature of the research question that what, how, and why, and not quantification, as you can see. And basically, the Chamberlain, Stefan, and Lenz stress the holistic orientation and social context of the qualitative research, while Denzi and Lincoln argues the most influential voices in qualitative inquiry point to the interpretive purpose, basically understanding the phenomena through the meaning people assign to it. And when you write your introduction, you are not just explaining your method, you're locating yourself in this sort of philosophical traditions, there's this epistemological traditions. And when you write your paper, reviewers will see it and understand if you're understanding overall what's the qualitative research is. So just briefly, I cannot stop on this difference between inductive and deductive reasoning. The distinction between these 2 understandings is very important, the fundamental. In quantitative, for example, we talk more about deductive work. You start with the theory, and then you come up with the hypothesis, and then you test the hypothesis, right? This is what we do in quantitative approach. In qualitative, we do it other way around. We start sort of from bottom up. We collect data. We see what's going on there in the field. And then we come up with the theory that can explain what's actually happening out there in the real world. The common weakness in the manuscripts that usually early researchers do is mixing these 2 without acknowledgement. Okay, if you're doing grounded theory, for example, you are firmly inductive. And I'm going to talk more about what does the grounded theory means. And if you're using a conceptual framework to structure your interview guide, then you definitely do the deductive approach that needs to be addressed in your method sections. In qualitative research, we can do both. We can do inductive approach, but we also could use the deductive approach as well. So that when you already have a theory and then you use the theory to develop your interview guides and overall guide your research. Okay, and core characteristics of the qualitative research. So basically, first we say that our data are words and images and narratives, okay, not really numbers as we do in quantitative. And second, the design is naturalistic. You study phenomena and where they occur, where they happen actually in the native habitat, not in controlled environment as we do for quantitative. And third difference is that the goal is understanding meaning of participants' perspectives, not really researchers. Okay, this is also important that we're trying to understand what actually people, okay, mean and what they think. The third is orientation is exploratory. You are mapping the breadth, okay, complexity and range. You're not going, you don't really dive into deeper, but you're sort of exploring the phenomena, trying to better understand the landscape. And the fifth characteristic is the most importantly for those who are considering publication. The qualitative research is a hypothesis generating. Okay, as we said in the deductive approach, we use qualitative research to generate hypotheses, not really to test them as we do for quantitative studies. Well, this means your contribution is more interpretive, okay, and theoretical, which creates specific obligations on you, how you write your results and discussion sections. Okay, so why qualitative research in healthcare is important? Because qualitative research really explains how and why something happens, not just how many. So qualitative research dives deeper into meanings, into experience of the people. Okay, try to look behind the numbers that we see and really goes into the meaning of the things. And while the quantitative or sort of the studies that rely more on the quantitative approach, they have statistics, obviously, but they don't really explain why something happens. Okay, and then explain also social context, social environment, qualitative research, try to make more emphasis on the human experiences and the mechanisms behind them. Okay, so key qualitative research designs. Okay, so basically now there are 5 major research designs that I would like you to keep in mind. Each has different purposes, theoretical traditions, and analytical logics. And choosing the wrong design for your question is one of the most reasons why any article would be rejected, the qualitative one. They will flag, so the reviewer will flag a mismatch between your stated purpose and the design and the method that you are using for your study. And this is very important. It's called methodological alignment or congruency when the design is aligned with your methodology and then the results as well. For example, if you want to understand the meaning of the process, you don't do quantitative study, okay? But if you want to, you do the qualitative, obviously. But if you want to understand the experience of the people, then you do the phenomenological approach. Then it will help you to better understand why nurses, the experience of the nurses burn out, for example, okay? And that would be the phenomenology. If you want to build a theory from the data, then you use the grounded theory approach that will design and explain the process and mechanisms of the phenomena you're studying. Case study, also another design we use a lot in health sciences, allows deep analysis of the a particular unit, like a hospital or person or policy or particular reforms. Ethnography also widespread. So basically studies the culture and practice in like in situ, sort of in the living environment, but it requires really extended field work. So basically, you observe people, you go there, you follow them, and you see how they do, what they do, how they practice, the clinical experience or any other practice they do. And the final narrative analysis examines the structure and meaning of the individual stories. As you can see, that research output differ across designs. And you don't produce a grounded theory from a phenomenological study, for example, okay? And you don't produce a cultural description of narrative study. Basically design shapes everything. If you, based on what design you are, you use the different tools to collect data and you use the different approach to analyze it. Okay, how to choose your research design? Three questions, okay, that you want to ask yourself. First, what's your research question? Second, what's your research aim? And then what's your research context? What's your research question points to phenomenology. And how does this process unfold question points to the grounded theory or case study. And what stories behind told your phenomena basically points to narrative, okay? And based what questions you have, you better understand what design you should use. Okay, though, second, what's your aim? Aim, describe, explain, and or generate theory. Depends on what you want to do. If you want to describe or explain, you also may use different design. If you want to generate theory, then obviously you use the grounded theory. If you want to better understand the experience of the people and describe it, then you use the phenomenology. And the third question, what's your context? Basically, talking about access, ethics, and resources, and all these things are meta. The place that you are studying, you are doing the research. For example, the graduate students designing the thesis study, I usually strongly recommend starting with this framework before reading any methodology literature. Basically, students have to better understand what do they want to do, okay? What's the aim? And after that, they dive into the methodology like data collection, tools, and other stuff. So I always suggest students to let the question drive the design, not the other way around, okay? And this is very important that you first understand what you want to do actually in your research. Okay, now we sort of entering the core session, how to structure your paper. Okay, and I want to be direct with you. Basically, structure of qualitative paper is not only a convention. Each section has a specific argumentative function, and the paper is a coherent argument. Okay, it's a story that explains and tells the story of the phenomena of what's happening in the real world, and not just a report that you would have. And every section has its own meaning and the job. Okay, so first one. This is the basically the anatomy, sort of a structure, how it look like. The title establishes the study's identity and methods. Abstract communicates the essence to both general audience and then the professionals. And many journals actually do the initial screening by looking into title and the abstract. And if it fits into their scope, they would accept it, even without reading the article itself. And they will make initial decision to accept your study or not. So that's why title and abstract are very critical to do it very high quality. And I will tell you more how to do this. So methods is the most scrutinized section. If the article goes further for the review, then the methods would be the thing that will be get the most comments from the reviewers. Results present analytical themes, usually with illustration and discussion, interprets findings in the context and establishing contributions. In conclusions, basically sort of crystallizes the significance and reference, obviously based on the article, you may want to use the style that is recommended, but it's suggested in qualitative research to include at least a couple of the well-known methodology articles as a reference, like Brown and Clark, Creswell or Lincoln and Guba. These ones, they're very important. Okay, just briefly, let me. This is the briefly stop on each of the sections. I have like 10 minutes more to go. So first one is title, and title, as I said, sometimes matter more than most students and most the young researchers can actually appreciate. Because, as I said, this is the first filter reviewers make by reading the title. A weak title fails, and it fails in three ways. First, it could be too weak. It sometimes misses the methods, and it provides no context. So that's why this formula that's shown on the slide is very important that you use when you're thinking about the qualitative title for qualitative research. So in title, it's always good to have the study, like the methodology approach you use, like qualitative study or phenomenological study or case study analysis. Basically, by doing so, you signal to the journal editor and the reviewer that you understand the qualitative conventions, okay, the qualitative designs and approaches, and also improves the discoverability through indexing. And Professor Gaipa will talk more about that a little bit later. But when the search happens online, title is one of the key sources. Okay, so you can try to apply your studies to this formula and see if your title fits. And here are a couple of examples, like, if you say just healthcare leadership would be weak, but if you say uncertainty as a phenomena in leadership during primary healthcare reforms, as you put the context and then you do the methods like qualitative study in Kazakhstan, this would be really an example of good title. Okay, the building a strong introduction. Introduction is has a specific logical architecture. As you can see on this slide, it's not a literature review that many students or young researchers do. They do the literature review and then think like this is the introduction. This is not. The introduction is has a funnel-shaped argument. When you start from the macro level, the broad concepts, and then you go narrow, 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 until you come up with the particular issue that you want to address, the particular gap that you find out in the field, and then based on this gap, you basically justify, okay, why this gap matters, and based on that, you close the introduction with clear and concise research aim. Basically, usually research aim starts like therefore, the aim of research is, and then you say what's the research aim, which should be addressing the gap that you have been proving and justifying in the introduction. Okay, and if any paragraph, doesn't really fit into introduction, so the most likely this is something that you may want to include in discussion. Okay, this is another tip you may want to keep in mind. Okay, one of the critical aspects when we do the introduction overall, we should have a problem, research gap, and rationale for qualitative approach, and you should explain why qualitative research answers better your study compared to quantitative research. Okay, the rationale for qualitative must be an argument, not a statement. Okay, and you are not saying I choose qualitative because I'm interested in experience. Okay, you may want to say you are that given the nature of the phenomena and the questions you raise, a qualitative design is the most appropriate choice. And here are some tips how to say like however little is known about. I mean, this is the how you would highlight the research gap and then go further with the research aim. Okay, the method sections is the that makes or breaks a qualitative paper at review. Okay, it's the most and the frequently cited reason for rejection and most frequently requested revisions based on the methodology aspects. On these slides, you can see 7 components that must be present. And on the right side, there's a trustworthiness criteria recommended by Lincoln and Guba's foundational work published in 1985. And these are sort of trustworthiness criteria are the something that we sort of equivalent, not exactly the same that we say for the quantitative studies like validity and reliability. For example, credibility corresponds to internal validity, more or less sort of transferability to external validity, not exactly, but more or less sort of same idea. Dependability is to reliability and confirmability to objectivity. And you must address these aspects. And many art journals nowadays require cork 32-item checklist. And please go online, download it. And actually, it's very helpful when you submit your paper. You should use it. And then many articles actually ask to submit cork checklist with your publication, with your manuscript. Okay, results section is where most qualitative papers written by early career researchers go wrong, usually. And error is almost the same, okay? Basically what they do, usually they presenting a descriptive account of what each participant say, okay? Instead of being more analytical about the data and what the data means. The core principle is stated on the slide. Basically, you present a theme, okay, not a transcript. Just recently, one of my students also submitted to me their papers, and the students were going like city by city. City in this city, people said this. In this city, people said that. And then present the result like, the doctor said this, nurses said this, and this is not how you do it, okay? You should come up with the themes, and one of the approaches is thematic analysis approach is usually used for this. Themes is more like analytical constructs, okay? It's not a summary of what people say. It's more interpretation and of patterns. Um, okay, and usually it's suggested that we use quotes, but quotes doesn't replace analysis, okay? They illustrate the analysis. The analytical statement usually comes first, and then we use 1 or 2 quotes to support it, then to illustrate the idea, the theme itself. And it suggested that 70-80% of analytical text and 20-30% would be the quotes used. Some students or some young researchers overdo. They put a lot of quotes, and they feel like by putting more quotes, it will like explain itself, the story. No, it doesn't work this way. You have your story, and then you use quotes to support this idea, not the other way around. Okay, the final, the discussion section. Basically, this is where you show your intellectual contribution. It's the section most frequently misunderstood by younger researchers who treat it as a place to repeat the results sort of at greater length. Okay, that's not the case. The discussion is where you contextualize your findings, okay, in the existing literature. So if you explain why your findings are similar to or different from other studies or the previous studies, and you articulate what your study adds, okay? And what else? So in the discussion, you also may want to talk about the implication aspects of your findings and the limitations that your study may have. And stop on the future research how we may want to move on. And discussion must not contain new data. Okay, this is very important. No including any new things that you haven't discussed in result sections. No emotional claims. Okay, sometimes in qualitative research, people tend to do it. And no unsupported generalizations and the repetition of result sections. Okay, so now I would like to just briefly stop on the publishing tips. So basically, this is the common reasons for rejections in qualitative research. Weak methods is the leading cause. Insufficient details, no justification for qualitative approach, no rigor strategies, and superficial analysis is also close behind. Basically, themes not described, themes that describe rather than interpret data. So basically, if you describe the things, this is not the way we do it. Also, no theoretical contribution. Reviewers look at this as well, and they may explicitly ask you, what does this add to the theory overall? Absence of reflexivity. Reflexivity is one of the way we're dealing with the quality and improve the rigor. In many qualitative journals, this is now an editorial requirement. Okay, English. Okay, as we are not native speakers, many of us, so that's why poor English quality is maybe one of the reasons as well. So please pay attention, invest some in the professional editing before you submit. And it could be just wrong journal, guys. Okay, please go through the scope of the journal, see if they accept qualitative studies at all, and then you may want to find some qualitative studies at this journal and see if what the structure they have, what things they pay attention to, what they are looking at. Okay, okay. The journal selection. This is the important, particularly for early career researchers. So these two strategies. One is selection of journal. Is most criteria is that it fits the, as I said, the scope and aim of the journal. Please look at it, and then avoid obviously the bad journals and then the predatory journals. And the strategy, other strategies that I want to recommend you. There are not short. There are no any shortcuts. Okay, guys. There are things that you have to do one by one. Move incrementally, sort of converting a strong. For example, one thing you may want to do, and which is usually underutilized, is convert your master thesis or the bachelor thesis into a publication. This is a good opportunity for you to start thinking about the publication. And also conference presentations before journal submissions also very valuable. You go there, you present your study, you expose yourself to sort of critical questions in a low stake environment, and submit to journals where you have cited authors. This is also another tip helpful. Use reviewer to feedback as a learning opportunity. Okay, this is also important that you don't be offended by what people say. You only see it as a feedback that really help you to be better researcher and improve your article. Okay, as you are responding to the peer review comments, the reviews, responding to reviewer is also a skill that you may want to improve, work on. It's also no need to be no being defensive or show your attitude. The researchers who publish successfully are not those who receive only positive reviews. Okay. Also, there are those who respond strategically and without defensive to critical one. Okay, no need to argue with reviewer Okay, unless you really believe you're the right, okay, this the way it's supposed to be, or unless it's like methodological reasons. Even then, explain your reasoning respectfully, okay? Write your response letter as a structured document, point by point. You explain and you show what you have done. Use the track editing function to show your changes so that the reviewer can directly go and see your changes. And important aspect is when to particularly make pay attention to trustworthiness strategies and reflexivity. This is also things that some young researchers miss in their studies. And be prepared for this and treat it as an opportunity to improve your manuscript, okay, as not as offensive or insulting something. Okay, some of the key takeaways that I want you to have. So strong research question is really drive your design and drive your study. Okay, transparent methodology. This is something you should keep in mind. Build credibility and trustworthiness with reviewers and readers. Analysis must be analytical, okay, not just descriptive. Don't just show it there with the quotes and demonstrate rigor. So use all four elements suggested by Lincoln and Guba, the credibility, transferability, dependability, and conformability, and actually show how you have done that. And academic writing quality, okay, this is something that really influence the publication success. Improve your English or use the specific services that really would help you to improve your writing. So, and also keep in mind that qualitative research, qualitative study is constructed. So if a deep is an argument, okay, and a story that explains the phenomena, deep requires systematic engagement and then with the human experience. So it advances understanding in ways that quantitative actual studies cannot do so. And I guess this is the value of the qualitative research, and that's what you are being trained to. Okay, and that's all from me. And thank you very much. I guess we will have now next speaker, and by the end we will